Picture a bullet. Now picture trying to shoot that bullet with another bullet. That is essentially what missile defense does, and for decades it has worked well enough against the weapons Iran was firing. That calculation just changed. On March 1st, Iran fired the Fateh-2 in combat for the very first time. A hypersonic glide vehicle, a weapon traveling between Mach 13 and Mach 15, 15 times the speed of sound, while actively maneuvering, changing direction, approaching from angles that existing defense systems were never designed to track. It reached its target inside Israel before most defense responses could fully develop. Defense footage showed it evading 2 interceptors. An IDF command center was struck, 7 senior officers were killed. And here's the thing that should make every defense planner deeply uncomfortable. The people who built Israel's missile defense systems already knew this moment was coming. They warned about it publicly in August 2025. They said the math didn't work. Nobody solved the math before March 1st. The weapon itself. To understand why the Fateh-2 is genuinely different from everything Iran has fired before, you need to understand what a hypersonic glide vehicle actually does, because it breaks missile defense in a way that is almost elegant in its simplicity. Every air defense system ever built operates on a single fundamental assumption. A ballistic missile follows a predictable arc. It launches, it climbs, it reaches the top of its trajectory, and it descends on a path that physics determines in advance. Radar tracks that arc. Computers calculate where the warhead will be in 90 seconds. An interceptor launches to meet it at that computed point. It works because the target is, in a meaningful sense, predictable. A hypersonic glide vehicle rips that assumption apart. The Fateh-2 launches on a solid fuel booster. Standard ballistic missile behavior at the start. But instead of a normal re-entry vehicle following a fixed descent arc, a glide vehicle separates. It skims through the upper atmosphere, maintaining speeds between Mach 13 and Mach 15, while maneuvering in both pitch and yaw. It can change course mid-flight. It can approach from unexpected directions. It can execute evasive maneuvers at speeds that compress every defense response timeline to almost nothing. From launch in Iran to impact in central Israel, under 4 minutes. The difference between this and the Fateh-1, the earlier version Iran used in June 2025, is significant and worth understanding clearly. The Fateh-1 used an advanced maneuvering re-entry vehicle, difficult to intercept, impressive in its own right, but ultimately still a modified ballistic trajectory. Western analysts, including Fabian Hinz of the International Institute for Strategic Studies, described the Fateh-1 as quasi-hypersonic, meaning it approached hypersonic speeds only in the very last seconds of terminal descent. The Fateh-2 is categorically different. It integrates a genuine hypersonic glide vehicle, allowing it to maneuver across the entire glide phase of flight, not just the final approach. That distinction is the entire ballgame. Iran unveiled the Fateh-2 in November 2023. It tested it, it refined it, and on March 1st, 2026, it used it in combat for the first time. At least 3 confirmed strikes. On Israeli targets have been documented since then. The trajectory and impact characteristics recorded in footage from Israel closely resemble Russia's Orishnik missile, which also integrates hypersonic glide vehicles, and which Russia deployed against targets in Ukraine. That comparison is not incidental. It tells you something about where the technology came from and how mature it actually is. The physics picture. The Fateh-2 changes direction during flight. When a wedge-shaped hypersonic glider approaches its target, it can flip and use aerodynamic lift to dive sharply toward the ground, executing a maneuver in the terminal phase that gives a tracking radar almost no time to update its fire control solution. Chinese researchers, publishing in the journal Tactical Missile Technology, concluded that to intercept such a weapon, a defending interceptor would need 2 to 3 times the lateral acceleration of the incoming missile. Even then, they warned, a partial strike might not guarantee destruction. Hypersonic glide. Vehicles are engineered with reinforced structures specifically to survive near misses that would destroy a conventional warhead. Baseski proposed a solution. A zone defense model where multiple interceptors cover defined areas and engage threats as they approach each perimeter. It is theoretically sound. It would take years to implement. It would cost tens of billions of dollars. Israel has not built it. The Fateh-2 is already flying. How every current system fails. Israel's defensive architecture is the most layered in the world. Arrow 3 handles threats above the atmosphere. Arrow 2 handles upper atmosphere terminal descent. David's Sling covers medium altitude threats. Patriot covers the lower atmosphere. Iron Dome handles short-range rockets and low-altitude threats. Iron Beam, the laser system that entered combat for the first time in 2025, covers drones and close-range projectiles. Every single layer of this system was designed around the same targeting logic. Find one inbound object following a predictable trajectory. Compute an intercept solution. Fire an interceptor to the computed point. The system works because the target goes where physics says it will go. The Fata-2 operates at altitudes between 12 and 30 kilometers during its glide phase, a range that sits uncomfortably between what Aero 3 handles above the atmosphere and what lower-tier systems handle below. More critically, it maneuvers. The intercept solution that was valid 1 second ago is no longer valid the next second. The fire control system has to recalculate while the target is already closing at 11 to 900 miles per hour. The window in which an intercept is even geometrically possible collapses faster than the system can physically respond. This is not theoretical. Defense footage from the current conflict showed the Fatah-2 evading 2 Israeli defense missiles before impact. The systems fired, they missed. The hypersonic glider hit the IDF command center. 7 senior officers died. That footage is the clearest demonstration possible of what the physics argument actually means in practice. The interceptors worked as designed. They just could not catch the target. The command center strike and what it signals. The choice of target on March 1st was not random. Iran did not fire the Fatah-2 at a fuel depot or an airfield. It fired it at a fortified IDF command center, one of the hardest, most protected target categories in Israel's military infrastructure. That targeting decision carries a deliberate message. Iran was demonstrating 3 things simultaneously with a single launch. First, that it could penetrate layered missile defense. Second, that it could hit hardened, high-value targets with precision. Third, that its most advanced weapon system was now in active combat service with confirmed, documented results. The Fata-2 costs an estimated $500,000 per unit, far less than the interceptor systems designed to counter it, and a fraction of the cost of any comparable Western hypersonic weapon. That cost asymmetry matters as much as the technical capability. Iran can field this weapon in meaningful numbers. It is not a rare, single-use demonstration system reserved for extraordinary circumstances. It is a production weapon that Iran built specifically to be used. The strike also demonstrated something about precision that defense analysts had questioned. Hypersonic glide vehicles are notoriously difficult to guide accurately at sustained Mach 15 speeds. Heat, atmospheric turbulence, and control surface stress all work against precision. The fact that the Fatah-2 hit a specific fortified building, rather than merely impacting in the general area, is operationally significant. It means Iran has solved, at least partially, the guidance problem that keeps hypersonic missiles from being truly precise weapons. Where the technology came from before the Fatah and Fatah-2, only Russia, China, and North Korea had operational hypersonic glide vehicles in their inventories. Iran is now on that list. Understanding how it got there matters for what happens next. Iran's ballistic missile program has always been built on outside assistance combined with indigenous development. North Korea transferred Scud technology in the 1980s. That foundation became the Shahab series, which became the basis for everything that followed. North Korea began flight testing its own hypersonic glide vehicles in 2021 and reached service entry with the Hwasong 16B in 2024. Military Watch magazine and multiple defense analysts have noted the close relationship between Iran and North Korea on missile development, and speculation that hypersonic glide vehicle technology may have moved through the same channel. Russia's Oreshnik, which Russia demonstrated in combat over Ukraine in late 2024 and early 2025, uses hypersonic glide vehicles with a flight profile that defense observers say closely resembles the Fatah-2's documented behavior. Whether that resemblance reflects direct technical assistance, shared engineering principles, or Iranian reverse engineering of observed Russian deployments is not publicly confirmed. What is confirmed is the result. Iran has a working hypersonic glide vehicle that has now hit targets in combat. Iran has a documented history of transferring advanced missile technology to its proxies. The Houthis in Yemen received cluster warhead ballistic missiles. Hezbollah received precision-guided rockets. The question that defense planners are now working through, whether hypersonic technology eventually moves through the same pipeline, is not a remote hypothetical. It is the logical next step in a pattern that has already played out twice. The gap. America cannot close quickly. The United States is in what analysts are calling a catch-up phase on hypersonic weapons. American hypersonic development accelerated after observing Russian and Chinese deployments. But the first operational U.S. hypersonic offensive missiles are only now reaching fielding stage as of early 2026. The defensive side, the interceptor that would stop an incoming hypersonic, is further behind. The Arrow 4, being developed jointly by Israel and the United States specifically to counter maneuvering reentry vehicles and hypersonic threats, uses AI-enhanced guidance and machine learning for real-time trajectory prediction. It is the right technological response to the problem. It is not deployed. It will not be deployed during this war. The broader U.S. missile defense architecture, THAAD, Patriot, Aegis, was designed for a different threat environment. THAAD was built to defeat medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles in their terminal phase. It was not designed to track a vehicle that maneuvers laterally at Mach 15 across the glide phase. Patriot was built for lower altitude terminal threats. Aegis SM-3 was built for mid-course intercept of ballistic missiles above the atmosphere. None of these systems were architected for the specific problem a hypersonic glide vehicle presents. The timeline for fielding systems that can genuinely address the Fatah 2 threat is measured in years. The threat is here now. That gap between the weapon existing and the counter existing is the window Iran is operating in. And Iran knows exactly how wide that window is. What comes next? The strategic response that the U.S.-Israeli force is actually using is the same one that applies to every weapon Iran fields that is difficult to intercept once launched. Destroy the launcher before the missile flies. The combined U.S.-Israeli force ran an aggressive campaign against Iranian ballistic missile launchers from day one of Operation Epic Fury, destroying approximately 300 launchers in the first 5 days. Iranian ballistic missile launches dropped by 86%. A Fatah 2 that never launches requires no intercept. But Iran's launchers are mobile. They are dispersed across vast territory in a country 75 times the size of Israel. They are concealed in hardened underground facilities. The hunt and destroy campaign reduces volume and buys time. It cannot eliminate the capability. And unlike most of Iran's missile inventory, which relies on liquid fuel and requires significant preparation time before launch, the Fatah 2 uses a solid fuel booster. It can be stored ready to fire. Launch preparation time is drastically reduced compared to older liquid-fueled systems. That makes it harder to catch on the ground before it launches, and impossible to stop in the air after it does. Beseski drew a basketball analogy that has not left the defense community since he said it. One interceptor missile tracking one hypersonic missile is like defending LeBron James with a single player. You may keep chasing him, but you won't stop him from scoring. Iran just showed the world it has LeBron. And the zone defense that might actually stop him does not exist yet. The engineers who need to build it are working on it right now, somewhere. But working on it is not the same as having it. And having it is not the same as deploying it. And deploying it is not the same as testing it under combat conditions against a weapon that maneuvers at Mach 15 while the clock is running. The physics said this moment was coming. It said so years before Iran fired the first one. The math was never in the defenders' favor. And on March 1st, 2026, that math showed up in a fortified building in Israel in the form of 7 officers who never saw it coming, because nothing currently in service could have seen it coming fast enough to matter.